Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Well, the big news during the past 2 days, the resignation of Nicholas Pooran, the West Indies white ball captain. And here we are again, guys. I am holder, Wayne Holder, and our very special guest. We've got Shane Lewis, who is the manager of the CCC. Is that correct, Wayne?
Yes, it is, Philip.
So let's start with the big news of the resignation of Nicholas Pooran. And here we are again, guys. This is not anything new. West Indies looking for a captain, that'll be white ball, red ball. Nothing new. This seems to be, we probably spend as much time talking about that as we talk about how many runs are scored and how many wickets are taken. But before we actually get into that, I want to offer a very special welcome to Shane. Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk, Shane.
Good night, everybody. It's glad to be here.
All right. So I don't know if we should put the guests on the spot first. I don't feel like being naughty tonight. I'm going to start with you, Wayne, when it comes to this Nicholas Pooran thing, because, you know, these things can be very controversial. And, you know, very often opinions, some people may take it personally, you know. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your reaction to the situation unfolding over the last few days?
Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that I would say that I am surprised. If I was surprised, it would have been the fact that that someone resigned. It is not part and parcel of the normal West Indies culture to resign. People normally hang on till the bitter end. But here we saw, coming out of that debacle that occurred at the last T20 World Cup there in Australia, we saw both the captain and the coach resigning their positions. But personally, I recommended that Pooran would have been relieved of the captaincy. It was a burden that he was not wearing very well. And I would have observed during the regional season, the regional international season, if you can call it that, where quite a lot of T20 cricket was played leading up to the said World Cup. And Pooran was not doing very well in his main area, which is the batting. And I thought that it began to become quite clear that he was really laboring under the burden of captaincy. And I myself would recommended that he be relieved. So I'm thankful, I'm happy.
Okay, well, since you have actually set the, set the stage now, so to speak, I suppose we can now invite our guest to share his comments, especially since he would have seen Pooran in action quite recently, close up, as a manager of the team. So you're actually in the midst of the action. What's your response to the recent developments?
Well, I have to agree with Wayne. I don't think that he was handling the pressure of it so much. And it also told on his actual personal performances. He's actually one of our more experienced, one of our better players. But when you see a person drowning underneath the pressure, I think it's best not only for him, but also for West Indies cricket to give someone else a try, because you don't want to destroy his career at such a young stage.
Ayana, you also saw things pretty close up during the Super 50.
Well, yes, I had the pleasure of being in the group of the winning captain, actually, of the CG United Super 50 Cup. And I think I can just echo both Wayne and Shane's sentiments that Pooran was feeling a bit of the pressure. And sometimes, you know, persons are not always brave enough to say, well, no, I don't think that this is for me. He has made that decision to relieve himself of the captaincy and focus on his individual performances so that he can give the team his best ability.
Guys, I'm not trying to say that I told you so or anything like that. It's not about that. But sometimes I wonder why people take so long to reach a point that, to me, is fairly obvious. And in this case, it's not even that people reached it eventually. Pooran had to actually reach that point himself. But before Pooran was even appointed, I felt that it was not a wise decision to give him the captaincy, especially the captaincy of both white ball events. I mean, I would have lived with the T20 only from the point of view that we were so close to the T20 and he being the vice captain. But I thought it was ludicrous, really, to saddle a player who is potentially probably your maybe most outstanding player of the future, at least in the white ball format. And remember, not too long ago, people were saying he should be playing Test cricket. So this is a guy that people expect a lot of. And to saddle him without proper preparation for the captaincy, I thought it was madness. And fortunately, he has come to that conclusion himself, maybe not madness, but he's come to the conclusion that it's not the best thing for him, and it's best for him to focus on his batting. And to my mind, the selectors and those who made him captain should have seen that months ago. Why do we take so long to see the obvious, man?
Well, I am saying that it is different strokes for different folks. There are people who thrive under in positions of responsibility, and then there are others. Pooran would have had a decent start to his captaincy career. We recall the 4-1 victory against Australia, for instance, and at that time, basically under the wings of Kieron Pollard, and the prospects look good. But once then he was left on his own. Well, he was left to fend for himself. We saw a different player, we saw a different reaction altogether. So it's just that he didn't thrive under the captaincy, but he looked promising at the start, and the selectors, I can see why the selectors would have been tempted into making him the captain in the first place.
Yeah, well, I see where you're coming from, but my whole thing, and I think you know me long enough, Van, to know where I'm going to go, that P word, preparation. For me, he was not thoroughly prepared for the task. So it was always going to be a gamble. Yes, some people thrive on it. It may have worked. I mean, I'm not a psychic, so I to say that I knew it would not work would be carrying it a bit far. It would be better for me to say that I was very uncomfortable with it because I didn't think he was well prepared. And I've been asked already, or at least some people have said you can't really teach a person how to captain a side. I don't know if I would express it that way, but I think that there are many things that you can prepare people to do, and one of them is leadership. You're a leader, Shane. What are your thoughts on preparation for leadership? Is it something that you have to be born with, or there are steps that can be taken to lead you to that point?
Well, it's interesting. Some persons have it naturally. Some persons have to be groomed into the role. As Wayne would have said earlier, I think it was you, Philip, that he had more experienced persons there to guide him along the way. I will have to do some research and see how many teams he led in the past in order to actually, that P word you used earlier, to prepare him for it. And he did have a good start in terms of the Australia series, the 4-1 victory. But you all know that in order to remain at the top, you have to be consistent with it. And we can see that when the pressure told, that was the end result of it. So based on the fact that the limited experience before and the limited preparation for it, is like a person going to run a 5,000, but they've only ever run a 100 meter before and trained for a 100 meter before. So you can't just wake up and become a leader just like that unless you have it naturally. And unfortunately, it's shown that he was not able to marry the two. So as you would have said, it is disappointing, but it's not surprising based on what would have happened.
Before bringing in Ayana, just let me clarify though. I'm not suggesting that the West Indies losing was because of his poor captaincy. That may or may not be so, and that's a separate debate. What I'm saying is, why risk your most promising batsman? Why take that chance to give him a position that has challenged many for a long time? And that's where I'm going with it. It's not to say, well, I knew that he would lose more matches than he would win. That's not the point. The point I'm making is, why take the chance of saddling your potentially best player with this responsibility, given the fact that he's had no obvious thorough preparation? And by preparation, I don't only mean captaining teams before. I actually feel that people need to be exposed, or young cricketers need to be exposed to leadership training, given some insight. I mean, there have been enough people who have captained West Indies and other teams successfully that in addition to, I mean, you write a whole curriculum for it because I'm talking about a structured course. But in terms of the interaction, there must certainly be interaction between these young cricketers and people who have had success, and even those who have not had success, because you can learn a lot from failure too. Yeah. So the point is that they need to be thoroughly prepared. And my concept of that is vastly different from most people I've talked to As I said, somebody said to me, you can't teach captaincy. With over 40 years experience in teaching, I draw upon that experience to totally disagree with that comment. But let's hear from Ayan.
Philip, it appears as though the captaincy of the West Indies cricket has been is there's a saying, the poison chalice or something like that. It appears to be because we never seem to quite get it right. And we can point at many events over the last decade, even 2 decades in West Indies cricket, and it will be interesting to see who the next West Indies captain is, because from my recollection, the last more successful West Indies captain, he was not the greatest player, but he was a superb captain. So we might be looking, our criteria for captaincy just might not be the adequate for the person who we need to lead a team like the West Indies.
Who do you have in mind? I know that you left us hanging there when you said our last. I thought you were going to call a name.
Who I have in mind to lead West Indies?
No. You said the last successful, but you didn't tell us who you meant.
Darren Sammy. I didn't think I need to say his name. I feel like the world should know his name.
But don't forget that it's not everyone who's following the program who may be immersed in cricket as you are, and Wayne and Shane and myself.
And even you, Philip, you definitely didn't know she was going to mention Darren Sammy.
But I eliminated Viv Richards and Clive Lloyd when she said that something about not being the best player or something like that. Because
but we can debate. I think we could debate Clive Lloyd as well.
No, I think Clive Lloyd. I don't think that. I mean, we could debate that, and that's maybe a separate debate. But I don't think that too many people would agree that Clive was not an outstanding player. What one could probably say, where you may very well be on a good point, when he took over the captaincy, at that point he had not yet maybe established himself among the top-notch players. But he certainly turned out to be, one.
Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying, he was a very good player. I'm not discrediting his ability or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that he might not have been the star player. Most recent times, we think that the best player has to be the captain.
I get where you're coming from. You're quite right. I don't think Lloyd was selected back then, if I can take my memory back to that point, because he was thought to be the best player as such. So I can go with you there. So guys, where do we go from here? We have discussed Pooran's resignation and maybe the reasons why he did it, whether he should have or should not have, and things of that nature. But where do we go from here? We're in this very familiar position. We've been here not too long ago, and here we are again. Ayan, I'm going to start with you, because last time you picked a captain, well, I don't want to hit below the belt, as they say. Let's put it this way. I'm going to give you the opportunity to go first. Let's leave it at that. We want to mention the Kieran Pollard thing going back a few years.
I have a very left field selection, and this is probably going to surprise a lot of our viewers. But I believe that Kyle Mears would make a really good white ball captain. I've watched him lead just at the domestic level. He's had some experience in the CPL this year, but I've seen Kyle Mears play for Carlton and rally a young side coming from first division back into elite and winning the T20 Cup a couple of years ago. And I think that he has the persona to be a good leader. I also think that Rovman Powell deserves some recommendation from how he's handled his team in the recently concluded CG United Super 50 Cup. I think under pressure, his players rallied with him, and he didn't bowl in every game, but there were critical times when he brought himself on and he got that wicket, and he also knew when to take himself out of the attack. I think he was very innovative, and I've been impressed. Those two, I will be interested to see who the selectors go. I know Kyle Mears is a pretty left field selection because he has not captained any sides at the regional or international level, but I think he's a worthy candidate, knowing the character.
Okay, Shane?
Well, my personal choice, and there's no bias here, would be Rovman. I go back to
Of course. Why would we think that there's any bias? Because he played for the CCC and South Korea UW. Why would we think that, Shane? Come on.
I had
And
to
really,
put
and to your credit, though, I must say to your credit, CCC and the domestic virgin, if you want to call it that, South Korea UWI, have been accused over the years, and I must say with some justification, of poaching players, if you will, from other entities. But when it comes to Rodman Paul, I think it is fair to say that it was through that medium that Rodman Paul actually came to prominence.
I agree. It takes me back to the 2016 Super 50 tournament. I remember distinctly we were 25-6 against the Windwards, and he came together with Akeem Dewar, and they put on a Nigerian partnership and put us to a competitive total of 155. That was actually the game that exposed Shamar Holder to the region as well and catapulted him to the Under-19 World Cup as a replacement player as well. So I do have personal experience with Rodman. I also look at his CPL performances as well and the way in which he led the Jamaica Talawas. And I've only ever heard good things about him. So he's taken a team that did pretty badly in the past in terms of Jamaica Talawas and took them to the title. And also now he's taken them to a Super 50 title in terms of Jamaica Scorpions. I think he has a presence about him. He does not shy away from responsibility. He has a calmness and he earns respect from his players. I think that in terms of that P word you used earlier, preparation, based on the criteria at least, he is a fantastic candidate for it. And even when you look around the other persons within the West Indies setup, I think he's the natural successor, discounting the fact that he is vice captain currently as well. So if I had to choose another white ball captain, I would have to go with Rodman Powell.
It is interesting that Rodman Powell was asked to captain the West Indies side some years ago. I think it was under the chairmanship of Courtney Brown. You can correct me if I'm wrong there. And it's interesting to see how, the shift was made away from him and others preferred to him. And now we're at the point now where virtually a number of people are calling for him. Wayne, what's your take on the whole thing?
But, I think, well, in that particular instance, it had something to do with form. Rodman Powell had found himself in a position where he was not necessarily maintaining a presence at the top of West Indies teams. And I think that his form kind of deserted him, and hence that would have been the result, that would have been the outcome as far as his captaincy stint was concerned. Right now, Rodman Powell is the obvious candidate. I would have to agree. If we go on again, we use that word again, form, CPL, and now the regional Super 50 competition, leading the team forward. West Indies in a crisis, we would have to say, as far as leadership is concerned, he becomes the obvious candidate. I would like to support Ayana's view regarding Kyle Mears. I'm sure that you would have heard me say this before, Philip. I don't think I
heard you. I heard you. You told me that before.
I might not write. That was in a private conversation. I would have mentioned that. There's something about Kyle Mears that impresses me. That he has what it takes to be a leader, and so I would support him as a candidate. But obviously, Rodman is the player in the limelight at the moment. I would like to ask there's one question mark surrounding Rodman Powell. Let me put it that way, but we just talked about it. Does he automatically make the one-day team even now? I can even put. I'm going to ask my two guests to put them on the line. If you had to pick a one-day team tomorrow to represent the West Indies, would Rodman Powell be an obvious choice? Whichever well, I see Shane has slipped to the top, so I'm going to start with you, Shane.
I would say yes. He has the ability with both bat and ball, and I have seen him be able to switch gears, so to speak. He has a very, very solid understanding of the game. And I think when you look around the region, he would be an obvious choice for a starting 11 for the team. But again, there's no bias attached to that statement. This is going purely on performance and ability. So I would say yes, he would be an automatic pick for any 50-over team in the West Indies.
Ayana?
I will admit that Rovman Powell's international stats in ODI cricket are underwhelming. And it takes me back to the point that I made about captains and best players. We might need to tap into Rovman Powell, the captain, and find a role that's suited for him within the team. Maybe it is at number 6, maybe it is at number 7. And since the last World Cup, West Indies has not definitively figured out the style of 50-over cricket that they want to play. So if we're looking ahead to a 2023 World Cup, then we're pretty much short-sighted because the preparation has not taken place. So why do we think that magically someone is going to take over the team and West Indies is going to do well? If we decide, however, that we are going to have Rovman Powell as the leader going into the following World Cup, and we can start to create a culture and groom a group of players to play, then I believe that Rovman Powell can fit into my West Indies 11.
Well, it's interesting, and I think you got some very good answers there. And I like how Ayana is thinking, because this whole thing about preparing for the next World Cup, not the 2023 version, you're talking about the one after that, right, Ayana? And I'm glad to hear that, because I find that we're too short-sighted in this part of the world. But then I don't know if you threw the question to me, but if you did, I will proceed to try to answer it. And I'll answer it this way. Many years ago, once upon a time, I was having a conversation with a number of other people working in the media. I think it was during the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean, and we were in the media center, and the discussion came up.
2010 you're talking about.
Well, when it was 10, 11, the one that was held, I'm not talking about the 50-over World Cup, no, the T20 World Cup.
No, you said, no, you qualified it, you said many years ago.
Good. So what I'm saying is, so the discussion, I think Chris Gayle would have captained the West Indies at that point. In that World Cup, but it was before the Darren Sammy era, and the discussion was about who should captain the West Indies side, because we all seem to be discussing that in the Caribbean. And I said my choice would be Darren Sammy, and the former West Indies captain Clive Lloyd, he was sitting next to me, and he said he thought about it for a while, and then he said, "But can he make the team?" And I said, "Well, if he can't make that team, then things will be wrong." And by that I meant the team in the big, strong team with no greats in it. Of course, Sammy can make the team. And I said that not only to show you that I recognize the leadership qualities in Sammy before he was appointed, but to show you that I could answer the question the same way now regarding Powell. If you look at the statistics, Ayana quite correctly said that his numbers are underwhelming. Identify for me how many players in the West Indies team, especially among the batsmen, have statistics in white ball cricket that are not underwhelming. So he's no worse than any of the others. So that's the first thing. So yes, he can make the team. And again, I'm going by Ayana though, we've got to get past that and recognize that there are times when we need a leader of men. New Zealand recognized this many years ago when they installed Lee Germont as the captain because there were some issues, and they created a place for him by taking Adam Perore, who was the wicketkeeper, made him the opening batsman, and Lee Germont came in as the wicketkeeper. There are times where you got to do stuff with. But in terms of this captaincy thing, it could be, I think Powell has set himself, given what little preparation anybody has had, Powell has probably set himself up to be a very strong candidate, but I'm not going to jump on any bandwagon. To my mind, somebody's got to do it. But until we start properly preparing these young men in a structured program, it's going to be hit or miss. And remember, captaining a regional team in a regional competition is vastly different to captaining the West Indies team against the powerhouses in international cricket out there.
Actually, Dwayne Bravo was the captain of that T20 World Cup team.
Thank you. The point is, it was before. No, but there's an important point because I wanted to make the point that Sammy had not yet been
Right,
installed.
all right.
as
Just by the way,
captain.
just by the way, just like I say, just by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, we know that, and I'm also a supporter of a leader, first and foremost, someone who has shown me qualities. I have never been one, let's say, to pick the team and then pick a captain. You know, I believe in the philosophy of a leader of men, someone who has displayed certain qualities.
And then you build on those
And,
qualities. You build on those qualities. The other point I want to make, sorry to cross you in, but what I really want to say in
yeah, no
summary
problem.
is that Kyle Mears and Paul should be, to my mind, then two of the first to enter into that college of preparation. So I'm not going to use the traits that I've seen in Kyle Mears or that you guys tell me there. I don't doubt you guys. But I wouldn't use those traits to say, put him as West Indies captain now or 6 months from now or even 2 years from now. I would use that to say, let us now start to prepare Kyle Mears and others for what could possibly be required of them moving forward.
Yeah, but what we do know now is that Rovman Powell definitely impressed during the most recent regional competition, that being the Super 50. Well, he would have been involved in the.
He was impressive, man. And I don't have a problem if his name is
Antigua.
captain. All I'm saying is I'm not jumped on any bandwagon that would suggest that he's going to do better than Pooran or anything of that nature. You've got to have a captain. We have not, we don't see it important to train him in a structured way. And what I'm saying is, until we do that, it's going to be a gamble. That's all I'm saying.
So
and I have
like
no difficulty gambling with Paul because I think he has shown enough that he deserves a look in.
No, but like I said, we did see Powell. We saw that the Jamaican, the Jamaica won the competition. All that is true. But Shane, you were on the Trinidad leg of things, and we out here, we didn't get to follow or to see as closely the Trinidad leg of the tour, because obviously the television segment was reserved for the Antigua leg. You were on the spot in Trinidad. You would have seen basically, well, you would have seen all the teams because CCC had to play against all the teams twice.
Yes,
Is there anyone else though that you would have seen who caught your eye? Let's say we're continuing along the leadership line. Anyone that you would have seen in that competition that would have stood out to you as Philip said, to join that group of people who might be looked at to as some kind of preparation for the future?
If I speak bluntly, I would say no. Because the captains there were Fletcher for the Windward Islands, Leon Johnson for Guyana, and Pooran for the Trinidad team. And being very honest with you, I didn't see anything outstanding to suggest that that person could be the one to unify a West Indies setup, which I know is very difficult to lead.
Who's your captain again?
My captain for this series was Dinesh Ramdin.
Okay.
From Trinidad. He has a good presence. He's very calm, very insightful, very experienced. But I don't think he's going to make. He's actually retired from West Indies duties now, so he can't be considered.
And he's been there before, been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that. So I don't see anyone that was in Zone A that I can say definitively would be the man for the job right now.
Anybody?
Ayana? No.
Okay, sorry, man. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to the other side. No, you were in Antigua, Ayana. For instance, I can draw one example. The present vice captain of the West Indies team, or the most recent vice captain of the West Indies team, was very much on display, leading one of the teams on the Antigua leg. Anything that you can report that you would have seen that could join Philip's list of players who we may need to look at?
I'm looking at a list of players. Just to clarify, I'm talking about a list of players for preparation for the future.
Preparation. Yeah, yes. I understand.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to join Philip in that sentiment in terms of structure, because I think that that's something that's really lacking in West Indies cricket. Every presidential term, it seems like the foundation changes. So I believe that we need to start to groom youngsters. Antigua, we had the West Indies Academy where Naeem Young was the captain. And I think that he did pretty well with the resources that he had. Personally, I didn't quite agree with the squad that the West Indies Academy had on display. When they won the competition in 2019, they had many more experienced players in the sides, and they put themselves in very good positions, but they didn't have the experience to really close out matches. The opposition always knew how to find the weak link and get over the line. So I think that Naeem Young is useful candidate for the future. Jamar Hamilton was his usual self, always a player that I admire, works really hard, always very energetic, and get his team to rally around him. They were I think that the Leeward Islands Hurricanes were pretty distraught having not made the semifinals based on the head-to-head ruling by Cricket West Indies regulations. Shea Hope, I think that he had a very inexperienced squad. Don't think that he utilized the players available to him very well. And Leon Johnson, I want to spend some time on Leon Johnson because he has led the Guyana team for some years now and had been successful as well in the red ball format. But I think that the white ball format, he's just getting to those semifinals, getting to those finals, but he's not been able to take that white ball championship. And I really would like to see how the Guyana administration proceed from here, because I can't see him continuing much longer in the white ball role.
If I may jump back in on the same leadership thing again, although I have a clear idea of what I'm talking about in terms of the structured leadership program, I believe that if Cricket West Indies decide to go that route, it would mean a number of heads sitting down and coming up with an actual program. But I just want to identify two elements of it that I could see even from this point in time. One, we're at the youth level. You could decide under 19. I wouldn't tie it down to an exact age group at this point, but at the junior level, anything from under 19 or before, where all the players are exposed to to that type of training. And then there's a second phase where then you would select players who you're shortlisting, so to speak. And that's where some of the players we talked about just now would come in. So I'm not talking about a program where you simply look at 2, 3, or 4 guys and work with them. I'm talking about something that starts at junior level. Okay. And then as you graduate, then you would then have a short list of guys who would move into that second phase. And that's just a little tidbit as to how such a program could be run, because there are different ways of doing it. All I'm saying is it must be structured. We've got to stop leaving this thing to chance and looking to see if a guy captain a club team here or under 19 team here. That's not adequate preparation in this day and age. But back to you, Wayne.
Well, yes, I wanted to take Shane back to Trinidad, though. I bring some picture to us as far as that leg of the competition was concerned. The pitches for one, and the scores, decent scores, I guess, from time to time. But generally, your thoughts on the standard of the competition. And I don't just mean the standard of play, I mean the standard of the preparation, the conditions, the organization.
Well, I found that the pitches, if you start there, they were a bit slow and low. It meant that there was no special game plan when it came to bowling tactics, at least. The simple plan was to bowl straight and back in the pitch, because most batsmen struggled to actually get the ball off the square in that regard. So the pitches did not really aid for adequate stroke play.
So would you suggest it was a bowler-dominated tournament?
There were a few high scores, I will admit that much. But you found that most of those runs came from bad bowling as opposed to enterprising batsmanship. So whereas if we looked at pitch maps and everything, even after the tournament, and you found that most of the balls that were both straight, they were difficult to score off of. Even things like straight rotation was very, very difficult to come by. I think that what has happened is that we have pigeonholed ourselves as West Indians as ball beaters, and that's where we struggled there. But when it comes to the 50-over format, because the ability to switch gears has been lacking, most persons don't know how to build a 50-over innings anymore because they're so accustomed to playing 20. So you will find that a lot of dot balls, if you check the stats all the way through, most teams average like 140, 150 dot balls, but you will make up for it with the bad balls and then obviously the big hitting. So that for me was a major concern in the tournament. You see a lot of teams go from, they will capitalize on the power play and get a decent start, probably 1 or 2 wickets down, and then the middle overs was just a lot of blocking, and then you get occasional single here and there, and then persons try to swipe. So you find persons losing a lot of wickets towards the back end, not only because they're trying to play shots, because you have to make up for the number of dot balls that were bowled throughout the inning. So if we're going to advance as a cricket playing nation, we have to fix that problem for sure, which is the straight rotation and how we deal with the middle overs. Because again, a lot of persons have their mindset on just 120 balls of cricket.
Ayana, given that we are on the threshold of just less than a year out from the next World ODI 50 over competition, did you get the feeling that what was provided in this competition was adequate preparation and a guide towards where we go as far as our participation in the next World Cup?
Well, honestly, when you look at the leading run scorers in the competition, they're all players who either currently represent or have represented West Indies in past, well, in either format really. Rovman Powell, Nicholas Pooran, Shea Hope, Brandon King, that's your top four. Calvin Hodge, he was awarded the best all-rounder in the competition. And my concern always is the amount of cricket that we play. So the players who are in the West Indies team, they may be heading out for a tour January or February. But for example, the Calvin Hodges, the Ale Athanaze, those type of players who have shown potential, but are not quite ready for international level. We don't seem to have any cricket for them to play. And that's my main concern, because if we have players active at the international level, we need to have the second tier in action as well, so that we can gauge and know, okay, we have adequate replacements who are ready and equipped, that when they step onto the international field, they're ready and they don't know how to learn. But because we only play Super 50 here, hopefully you get 118 tour, it's very hard to know what resources you really have.
Then Ayana mentioned the name Alec Athanaze. Started the competition with a bang, petered out somewhat towards the end. Is he special? Is there anything special that you saw there?
Well, he has ability. That is not in doubt. The thing about the nature of cricket is that most persons they'll get the footage and they will study you and they will work out your weak areas. So I think that he hit the ground running in Zone A, 2 centuries in his first 2 matches. But as persons study you, it's easy to work you out. And I think he was a victim of that. Even following on what Ayana said just now, I always said that we expect miracles when the West Indies step onto the field in 50 over cricket. We play a maximum of 8 to 10 games a year. And as she said, Athanaze played this Super 50. He played 6 matches, and he's probably not going to play a regional game again until next year for the Super 50 again. So we have to bridge that gap in order to really be competitive on the world stage. So I definitely have to agree with her when it comes to that. We don't play enough cricket here in the region. When you look across the world, I know everyone's going to say resources, because tournaments are money, tours are money, but we have to find a way in which we can get these persons competing against other persons, so when they make the step up to the international level, they're a bit more prepared than they are now. Because as Philip would have said earlier, preparation is key, whether it's leadership, whether it's actual cricketing ability.
And your campaign as CCC, it was a welcome sight to greet or to see CCC back in the competition. How did that go for you? And you satisfied that it served the purpose? I know we're not going to talk about the results, but the fact that they were back in the competition, do you see it as having fulfilled the purpose?
Well, I always say that CCC, the main goal for CCC, apart from allowing tertiary level students to play on the regional scene, is to expose persons to the other territories as well. I often tell my players that I hope not to see them again in the next year. That meaning that if they perform well enough other teams will come in and pick them up. So I would have noted in particular the bowling ability of Matthew Ford. He had a pretty decent competition with the ball. The runs, we did not really get a lot of runs, but I saw a lot of promise. And with the right exposure, I think that those persons can break into other territorial teams in the future. So it didn't go well results-wise, but at least gave the guys the opportunity to taste what it's like at this level, so they know what to expect going forward. And hopefully other territories will see persons and then include them for their teams next year.
Ayana, it would be almost a travesty if we didn't zero in on the local Barbados team and their performance in the competition. We noted that there was some improvement as far as the result was concerned over the previous year. But generally, were you satisfied with who we had, who Barbados had? Were you satisfied with the eventual output?
I don't think that we utilized the resources that we had to the best of our ability. I was a little disappointed that Ramon Simmons did not feature in the semifinal, at least up against Trinidad and Tobago Red Force. I imagine that when you're playing Trinidad and Tobago Red Force, especially with the resources available, you know that Pooran, Darren Bravo, Jason Mohammed, Yannick Carrier, those guys don't really like a lot of pace. And Ramon Simmons, I mean, Jair McAllister was also in the squad. McAllister did not even get a game. But I think that pace was needed in that semifinal against the Red Force side. In the final, you saw that that was the strategy that Powell and his bowlers used against the Trinidad batsmen. So that was one disappointment for me. On a positive note, though, Zachary McCaskey registered two half centuries, showing some potential at the list A level. He's played, say, 2 or 3 seasons now. Shea Hope was his usual self, scoring regional runs. However, players like Nicholas Curtin, Shamar Springer were just average, but honestly, you have to admit that you need to give them some time. They're in and out of the side depending on the availability of the international players. So I really hope that the Barbados team doesn't, because we love to do this, have these trials, right? And I think having been a part of the team for this year, the selectors and the management must come to a certain understanding that these players are the future. It does not make sense discarding players because they had one bad Super 50, because you're only going to take up another set of players who are inexperienced as well. Why not try to prepare them for the future so that maybe in a year, 2 years, when your plan has really borne fruit, that you probably win the championship, So I left this one for last. Rashawn Primus finally got an opportunity to show the world what he's capable of. A player who is not the most stylish, classiest type of player, but he has a persona and character that really commands when he's in the middle, whether it is with the ball or with the bat. And the innings that he played, I mean, I was on the sideline shivering, because if Barbados had won that game, in my time of actually watching live cricket, it would have been probably one of the best innings that I ever watched. When he came into bat, Trinidad really obviously felt that like, the game is over.
We got this.
We got this. But Primus, with his experience of playing cricket in Trinidad as well, he was able to be himself and just express himself. So for Barbados, a lot of things to take away heading into next year's competition. And without calling any other names, I think some baggage to release as well.
But I want to call a name though, not to do with baggage. We saw a rare specimen included in the Barbados setup, a right-arm wrist spinner. It is not normal that we see right-arm wrist spinners or wrist spinners generally in the Barbados setup. As I said, they are a rare specimen among us, and I want to applaud the management for taking that move to invest in young Javed Leacock. How did he shape up for you?
I think Javed Leacock did pretty well. A lesson one student as well. We went to school together. But I was really proud of Javed. I think in the first
okay, so we can dismiss anything that Ayana says from now on about him.
His first couple of matches, you know, you could see the nerves. He was probably trying a bit too hard to be consistent and try to pitch the ball in certain areas. But as he came back into the competition, he started to put it all together and got the rewards, because you know the leg spinner is always that bowler where batsmen will try to target. And there was a wicket he got of Hamilton where he delivered from a little further back and deceived him, because he had hit him over cold corner previously and also had a chance that was filled, but he went again because he trusted his skill. And I was really impressed to see that. And he is a player. I mean, the leg spinner, I have a lot of time for the leg spinner, because I think practice is very important. They're not going to be as successful every time, but I believe that they can be match winners.
All right, and yes, Shane, you.
Yeah, as a former leg spinner myself, I agree wholeheartedly. I think there's a tendency for us to go in the direction of left arm spinners because of the accuracy and control that they may have. But we've seen time and time again across the international landscape whereby leg spinners, they present a huge danger to batsmen. And I think that we discard them so quickly, especially for the West Indies setup, that there's not really an opportunity to grow in the role. I saw a number of them in Zone A at least. There was one from Mimward, can't remember his name right now, so forgive me for that. Trinidad, they had Imran Khan and Yannick Carrier. Guyana, Guyana did not have a leg spinner. In my CCC team, there was Abhijay Man Singh and Navin Badesi, and a leg spinner always gives you something. There's a lot of variety. They bring something different to the game. And I think that we as a region, we have to be a little bit more patient with them. They may go for a bit of runs initially, but once you have the opportunity to grow, as Ayana would have said, they can be an asset, they can be a key wicket taker. And I think it's something that the West Indies needs to look at going forward, as opposed to just this proliferation of left arm spinners all the time.
Shane,
Before I hand over to
a quick question, really, not to spend time on it, but what we're talking about leg spinners and we're talking about CCC. Akeem Dewar showed some promise some years ago and then totally just fell away. Could you explain that?
I think the only person that could answer that would probably be Akeem himself. I guess there was some personal stuff behind the scenes, and obviously a lot of the stuff when it comes to cricket is psychological and mental, so it affected his cricket. But he's still around the game. That's important. He's worked a lot on his batting, and I know he's still working on his bowling too. So I wouldn't say it's the end of the road for him. But at this point in time, he's not been bowling as he used to before.
Okay, sorry, back to you.
No, before I hand over a segue to another former leg spinner. He's not a leg spinner, but Sunil Narain, he would have been part and parcel of that Trinidad team. One notices, though, that he didn't have the kind of devastating effect that he normally would have. I think it had when you were there on the spot, And what do you think of his performance?
The thing about everyone knows the danger that he possesses, so most game plans would say will bat him out. So that's where you see he boys 10 overs for like 25, 30 runs, 1 or 2 wickets. So there was not a lot of positive intent when it came to facing the rain because everyone knew
nobody told Russian Prime Minister, nobody gave him the memo though. But back to you.
that in itself speaks volumes, because if you put a person under pressure, they're still human and things can happen. But generally, most teams decided that they were not going to allow the rain to be rampant on the team. So as a result, he was able to be very economical in this tournament. So he went through his overs most times 1 or 2 wickets the most, and that again because most persons tried their best not to get out as opposed to trying to score runs.
And with that, I will hand over the final segment of the show to another former leg spinner.
You flatter me, man. Yes, but just to pick up on a couple of things Ayana said, there's so many things one can pick up on here, but I'm going to pick up on starting with the Roshan premise again. I think what Roshan premise showed, at least what he confirmed in my own mind, is the importance of judging people on cricket. I've heard all sorts of things said about Roshan Primus. At the end of the game, in fact, somebody made a comment in the chat I was in that he was tired at the end. I don't know who would go and bat using that amount of energy under that pressure for that amount of time and don't be tired. I thought it was some significance in the comment, and I thought it was unfortunate because we keep looking at the wrong thing. I believe in Shane and Ayana that if we judge cricketers and select teams based on runs and wickets, we're not going to go too far wrong. I'm glad to see though that Primus got the chance. Well, I should say I'm glad to see because he didn't bat that early. But I always wondered why at the regional level he's been used more so, I would say, as a bowling all-rounder. Then at the local level, we know Primus to bat at 3 and 4 and wherever and score bundle runs. So I'm glad now that he has shown without doubt that he has the capacity to bat. And I'm hoping that he's not just considered to be now a low order basher, but that people recognize that here's a guy that has real batting ability. In terms of Zachary McCaskey, averaging 35 after 12 matches, 2 half centuries out of 11 innings he's played in Lisay cricket. That speaks to his consistency because an average of 35 is better than most at regional level nowadays. And to just have the 2 half centuries, it shows that when he's not scoring half centuries, he's still contributing. So I agree with Ayana that we've got something there to look at. In terms of Springer, another player Ayana mentioned, I always wondered, or I shouldn't say I always wondered, I understand why people see him as maybe a bowling all-rounder or the batter. But when I watch Shamar Springer at the local level, which is where he normally gets a chance to settle down and bat, because at the higher level, he would tend to bat a lot later. And I believe that he's actually a better batsman than a bowler. And it's just a matter for somebody to explore that and develop that.
I totally agree with you, Philip. Because again, all we're really looking for is consistency. And again, utilizing the resources available. I think this season showed us that there are youngsters in Barbados cricket who has the ability to perform at the regional and international level. Shamar Springer, player who has had challenges with injury as well. And I don't think that we needed to put the strain on him that we did. He bowled, I think that he bowls really well in the depth. He has very good variations. But we could have possibly played another bowler, the Simmons, McAllister, new ball bowlers, so that you give players like Shamar Springer, the all-rounder, an opportunity to really balance his game and already put him under that pressure because Shamar Springer basically had to carry a lot of the bowling load, So just looking forward to see how we manage these players going forward.
Fair enough. Before we can't really finish the show at a time like this without just, however briefly, looking forward to what's going to be coming up over the next few days. And I'm talking, of course, about the Test series in Australia. I was looking through a scorecard recently and I saw the name Chanderpaul and I had to smile. I'm going to tell you why I smiled. But before we get into the Australia tour, we're going to take a break on anything cricket. Let's talk. Okay, so that smile. Checking the scorecard for that was the first innings of the West Indies match against the Prime Minister's 11. There are two things I recognize, or two scores that stood out. Craig Brathwaite, I think he made 47, and a century by Chanderpaul. And I had to smile because as I looked down the scorecard, I think the next best was 25 by Joshua De Silva. And I reflected on the people who were saying if Chanderpaul and Craig Brathwaite open, but Lynchy's score is going to be 30 without loss, and all those snide comments. Now I don't know if Chanderpaul will be successful at Test cricket or not. I don't have a crystal ball. What I do know is that he's done enough to deserve a chance. And if West Indies go to Lynch at 30 without loss, that would probably be one of the best starts that would have to rank among the better starts that we'd be happy. Because how often have we gone to Lynch at 60 for 4 or 50 for 3? So I don't have a problem with Jadran, Chanderpaul, and Brathwaite opening the bat. And if they bat all day and we score 125, so will it be. Mind you, I don't think any of those things will happen. But I guess I'm being as sarcastic as those who believe that they're too slow. I believe that they have just as a good chance of doing well as anybody else, and probably better than most. That's just my take on the Chanderpaul issue. As I said, I don't know if he'll be successful or not, but there's no doubt in my mind that he deserves the opportunity to be exposed.
Well, from my end, there really is not a Chanderpaul issue. We look forward to the West Indies continuing what has been a fairly decent run in Test cricket for the year. Of course, we know the tremendous challenge playing against Australia alone. And then adding to that you're playing against Australia. In Australia, you're playing the first test at Perth. The second test is going to be a day and night encounter. I mean, you can't ask for a greater challenge than that. And I am very keen to see how the West Indies respond to that particular challenge. And what I can say is that I hope I'm looking at the likes of I'm very, very, very enthused and encouraged by what I'm seeing from Alzarri Joseph. He seems to be getting better every time you see him, and I think this has the potential to be a breakout tour for him. The same Chanderpaul will get an opportunity. Still very early. Well, he hasn't even started a Test careers yet, but it will be key. I will be keeping a close eye on him. I have the greatest of respect for that man called Craig Brathwaite, and he is the one that I expect to be the glue around which the West Indies team is going to function. And I'm not expecting miracles. I'm not going to say that we're going to blow Australia out of the park, but just to continue and show me some spunk, show me some fight, and I would be happy with that.
My greatest concern really is not even Chanderpaul, but my greatest concern is our ability to take wickets. And maybe it's difficult to read a whole lot into the warm-up games because you're not really seeing a lot of it, and you're so far away, and even the conditions and so on. You have to take other people's word for it. We heard that the pitches were very good and all that. But that's my concern at this point in time. But quite often we see warm-up matches will show one particular story, and then the touring team in the test matches, then it's a totally different ball game. So we'll just have to wait and see. What's your take on the whole Australian tour, Justin? Sorry, Shane, and your. Well, it wasn't really wrong with you, Justin. It's just that you're probably more Shane. What's your take on the whole Australian tour and your expectations?
If I'm honest with you, I often worry when it comes to Test cricket because when I take a look at the regional tournament, most games usually finish within 3.5, 4 days the most. And I think that's where we fall short when it comes to 5-day cricket. It's harder, it's longer, and even the reference I made earlier in terms of trying to run a 5,000 when you only train for 100.
Mm.
I think is a learning experience for persons on the job, and it's not the easiest way in which to function. I don't think there's any wicket in the region except probably for Kensington that can replicate what you will find in Australia. So most guys have to take those practice games as the learning experience to take into the game. And we all know that our practice game has a different mentality to when it comes to the actual game itself. So I always hope for the best when it comes to Test cricket. I'm not sure what to expect, but all we can say is that we can hope for the best. In terms of Chanapal, a lot of persons say he bats slowly, but I'd rather he bats slowly and get himself in, because we all know once you get in, it gets a lot easier. So once you give yourself time at the crease, along with all the other batsmen, we stand a better chance. And the ball in front, we have some pretty experienced campaigners. Most persons would have said that Alzari is a better white ball bowler than a red ball, but as Wayne would have said just now, he's coming into his own as a red ball bowler more and more. So once he continues along that same line, we do have the possibility of causing an upset when it comes to that Test series in Australia.
Ayana?
I think that the guys had a good rest period leading into these warm-up matches between some of the guys who would have played in the T20 World Cup as well. And it's always a challenge when you're playing against the best teams in the world. However, if Tej Narain has just a little bit of the work ethic of his father, then I look forward to seeing what his career can produce. Because if he works hard and try to listen to any advice that his dad may give him, I look forward to seeing what he gives us. He has had a really good year. Coming from the regional first class competition now in the West Indies squad. I look forward to that. Captain Craig, I think that he's going to have a tough challenge on his hands. We're not playing in the West Indies. We're not playing against Bangladesh, so I really look forward to see how he manages this team and how he performs himself in Australia, because the last time West Indies were in Australia back in probably about 2015 wasn't a very good experience.
Then Ayana sort of wondered or maybe suggested that Taj Chanapal maybe or could possibly be just a slight chip off your block, and I'm wondering, if she can relate to something like that.
The evidence is quite clear. Who has eyes to see, let them see.
Okay, so basically, are you saying then that if Chanapal follows the same path as Ayana, he should actually be better than his father? You don't have to answer that.
No.
You don't have to.
We will change tactics.
You don't have to answer that.
It's always supposed to be better than the teacher, though.
Okay, fair enough. All right, as long as you're good with that, I'm sure all will be well. Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks to Ayana. Thanks to Shane Justin. I've called you all sorts of things, but we're going with Shane. All right.
Special thanks to Shane.
Special thanks to Shane for joining us. And I think that he has, like Chanapal so far, has done well to settle into the side. And I think we got some pretty solid performance from Shane. So it means that he will have an invitation back on Anything Cricket Let's Talk. You can agree with that, man?
Very much so.
Okay, so the selectors have spoken.
But yeah, the selectors, yeah, he's earned himself another play.
Okay. All right, thanks, guys. All right, so thanks to you two viewers for joining us on Anything Cricket Let's Talk. And we look forward to being with you again soon.